A very warm and gentle welcome to you, dear friend, and our sincerest thanks for choosing to share a little of your precious time with us here in our quiet corner of the world. It is our dearest wish that this particular story, woven from threads of stillness and soft light, might serve as a gentle companion on your journey towards peaceful rest, helping to guide your thoughts ever so tenderly towards the soft shores of easy slumber, where worries may simply drift away like fallen leaves upon a slow, warm stream. So, as you settle yourself down, perhaps nestling into your coziest spot and allowing the gentle feeling of comfort to settle upon you like softest thistledown, just before your eyes drift closed and your listening device is placed quietly aside for the night. If this unfolding story brings a measure of soothing balm to your spirit, please do consider offering a little tap to like this story, and perhaps even a gentle click to subscribe to our channel. It would be a most thoughtful kindness that would truly warm our hearts. And now, with a soft, quiet breath, let us allow the gentle peace of our narrative to begin its tender unfolding. Chapter 1. The Whispering Threshold and the First Sigh. The world outside the hidden way had been one of clear skies and a gentle, unassuming sun. Yet as the wanderer passed between the two great smooth-worn stones that marked the entrance to the vale, it was as if they had stepped into a perpetual soft twilight. The air, too, underwent a transformation, losing a certain crispness it had held moments before and becoming, instead, something fuller, softer, imbued with a warmth that was not of the sun, but of the earth itself. A gentle exhalation from the living ground. It was a warmth that did not startle, but rather enfolded like the most tender of greetings from an old, kind friend whose return had been long anticipated. A profound hush lay upon this sheltered place, a quiet so deep and encompassing that it seemed to possess a texture like the finest, softest velvet one might imagine. Though, of course, there was no velvet here, only the natural world in its most serene aspect. This quiet was not an emptiness, but a fullness, a presence that absorbed the small, sharp sounds of the outer world, leaving only the gentlest of auditory impressions. The wanderer stood for a long moment, simply breathing it in, this palpable stillness, feeling the hurried rhythms of their own heart begin to slow, to attune themselves to the vale's own unhurried pulse. The path, if one could call it such, was less a worn track and more an intuitive way forward, guided by the subtle lay of the land and the gentle beckoning of the deepening peace. Underfoot, the ground was soft, a mixture of fallen leaves from seasons long past, now rendered into a rich, yielding humus, and tiny, almost invisible mosses that cushioned each step. The wanderer noticed, with a quiet appreciation, how their own footfalls, which on a graveled path might have crunched with some small importance, here made scarcely a whisper, allowing the deeper silence of the vale to remain undisturbed, a courtesy offered by the very earth. From somewhere deeper within this gentle domain, carried on the barely stirring air, came the faintest of sounds, a melodic sigh, long and drawn out, like the contented breath of some immense sleeping creature. It was a sound that spoke of warmth, of water perhaps, and of a release so complete it bordered on a gentle song. It was not a sound to investigate with urgency, but rather one to acknowledge with a nod of the heart, a promise of further wonders, of deeper peace yet to be discovered in this extraordinary hidden sanctuary. And with that sound came a scent, or rather a subtle tapestry of scents, woven together with such delicacy that one had to consciously attend to them to distinguish their individual threads. There was the clean, wholesome fragrance of damp earth, rich and fertile, the very scent of life quietly renewing itself. Mingled with this was the faintest, almost elusive sweetness of unknown blossoms, perhaps flowers that only unfurled their petals in such profound quiet, their perfume too shy for a noisier world. It was a balm to the senses, this gentle air, clearing the mind of cobwebs spun by cares left far behind. The stones that formed the narrow gateway, ancient and immense, were cool to the touch, a coolness that spoke of deep, undisturbed foundations and the slow passage of countless quiet years. The wanderer had rested a hand upon one as they passed, feeling its smooth, water-worn surface a silent testament to time's gentle artistry. Yet, once within the vale proper, this coolness was replaced by that pervasive, gentle warmth, a warmth that seemed to rise from the ground, to emanate from the very air, to settle upon the skin like the softest of shawls, woven from threads of pure comfort. It was this warmth, more than anything, that began to work its quiet magic upon the wanderer. It was not an oppressive heat, nor a fleeting sensation, but a steady, reliable presence, like a faithfully tended hearth in a welcoming cottage. It seemed to seep into the bones, coaxing forth a relaxation that had been long forgotten, a loosening of muscles that had been held taut for so long their tension had become an unnoticed habit. A sigh, mirroring the distant sigh of the springs, escaped the wanderer's lips, unbidden, a soft release. They moved forward slowly with no particular destination in mind, content to simply be within this place, to allow its peace to settle more deeply. The light, as mentioned, was that of a gentle twilight, yet it was not dim, for the undersides of the broad leaves high above seemed to catch and diffuse some unseen luminescence, casting a soft greenish glow upon the path ahead. It was enough to see by, enough to appreciate the subtle beauty of a fallen feather or the intricate pattern of lichen on a slumbering branch. Here, in the Vale of Gentle Warmth, every small detail seemed to hold a quiet wonder, waiting patiently to be noticed. And so, the first impressions were formed not of grand vistas or startling phenomena, but of a pervasive, gentle kindness held within the very fabric of the place, a kindness expressed in the soft air, the profound quiet, the yielding earth, and above all, the embracing elemental warmth. The wanderer felt a sense of having arrived not merely at a location, but at a state of being, a place where the soul could unfurl just as those shy, hidden flowers might be unfurling their petals in the deeper stillness. The journey into the vale had truly begun. Chapter 2. The Luminous Moss and the Murmuring Pool. As the wanderer ventured further into the embracing quiet of the vale, following the almost imperceptible invitations of the landscape, the gentle twilight seemed to deepen. Yet, paradoxically, the way became clearer. This soft illumination, they soon discovered, emanated not from the sky, veiled as it was by a thick canopy of broad ancient leaves, but from the very ground itself. In sheltered groves, nestled at the roots of venerable trees whose bark was as smooth and cool as river stones, grew extensive carpets of a most peculiar moss. It was this moss, the lumen moss, that cast a soft pearlescent glow, bathing the surroundings in a gentle diffused light, a radiance like captured moon glow. though no moon was visible here. The light it offered was of a unique quality, not sharp or brilliant, but rather a soothing, steady luminescence, primarily in shades of the softest green, with hints of pearl and ivory where it grew thickest. It outlined the edges of fallen leaves with a delicate silver and cast the undersides of ferns and low-hanging branches in a gentle, ethereal glow, creating a scene of profound and peaceful enchantment. The wanderer knelt, drawn by its quiet beauty, and reached out a tentative hand, allowing their fingertips to brush against its downy surface. It felt wonderfully soft, like the finest plush, and surprisingly, it radiated a subtle warmth, a gentle heat that seemed to be a natural byproduct of its luminescence, a gift freely given. For a long, unmeasured stretch of time, the wanderer simply sat beside one such glowing carpet, observing the way the light pulsed, almost imperceptibly, like the slowest and gentlest of heartbeats. It was a calming sight, this quiet, living light, and the warmth it exuded was immensely comforting, seeping into the palms of their hands as they rested them upon its surface. It felt like a friendly presence, this moss, a quiet companion in the stillness, asking nothing, offering only its gentle light and warmth. There was a profound sense of peace to be found in its steady, unassuming glow, a reassurance that even in the deepest quiet, life and gentle energy persisted. Not far from a particularly vibrant grove of luminous moss, where the air itself seemed softly illuminated, the wanderer became aware of another subtle sound joining the profound hush of the vale. It was a low, contented murmur, a sound deeper and more resonant than the sighing of the distant springs, and it seemed to draw them onward. Following this gentle auditory thread, they came upon a secluded pool, nestled in a hollow and fringed by smooth, dark stones. The water within was perfectly clear, so still that it mirrored the glowing moss and the dusky canopy above with flawless precision. Yet, from its surface, slow curling tendrils of steam rose in a silent, graceful dance. This was one of the resonance pools, and the murmur came from the very heart of its waters, a deep, vibrational hum that was felt as much as it was heard. It was not the sound of bubbling or boiling, but rather a steady, soothing thrum, like the earth itself purring contentedly from its core. The wanderer sat upon one of the smooth, warm stones at the pool's edge, feeling this gentle vibration travel up through the stone and into their own being. It was a strangely comforting sensation, this deep, quiet resonance seeming to align with some ancient rhythm within, encouraging the breath to slow, to deepen, to find its own effortless cadence. The warmth emanating from the pool was more pronounced than that of the luminous moss, yet still gentle, mingling with the cool freshness of the vale's air to create a perfectly temperate microclimate around its edges. The steam that rose carried no particular scent, only the pure essence of warmed water, yet it softened the features of the landscape, draping the nearby ferns in a delicate, transient mist, adding another layer to the vale's dreamlike atmosphere. There was a timeless quality to this place, a sense of processes unfolding at their own natural, unhurried pace, indifferent to any demands save those of gentle equilibrium. The wanderer dipped a hand into the water, finding it wonderfully, soothingly warm, like the perfect bath prepared by a most considerate host. The clarity was such that they could see the smooth, rounded pebbles lining the bottom, each one distinct, their colors muted to soft grays and gentle ochres by the water's embrace. There was a purity here, an elemental simplicity that spoke directly to a quiet place within the soul, bypassing the need for thought or analysis. It was simply good to be here, to feel the warmth, to hear the murmur, to observe the gentle dance of steam and light. The combined effect of the glowing moss and the murmuring pool was one of profound tranquility. The soft, pervasive light banished any sense of gloom, while the gentle warmth and the soothing hum created an environment perfectly conducive to rest and quiet contemplation. The wanderer felt the last vestiges of any inner hurriedness begin to dissolve, like sugar melting in warm tea, leaving behind a clear, sweet sense of presence. Here, surrounded by these gentle wonders, it was easy to simply be, to let go of all else and become a part of the Vale's deep, abiding peace. And so, in this haven of soft light and soothing sound, the wanderer rested, not in sleep, but in a state of deep, wakeful repose. The hours, if such a measure had any meaning here, slipped by unnoticed, marked only by the subtle shifts in the intensity of the moss's glow or the changing patterns of the rising steam. It was a time of quiet absorption, of allowing the gentle magic of the Vale to work its restorative balm, a time of simply connecting with the profound, unwavering stillness that was the very essence of this blessed place. Chapter 3. The Hearth of Stillness and the Scent of Comfort. Drawn by an almost imperceptible increase in the ambient warmth and a subtle, inviting fragrance that began to weave itself into the existing tapestry of earthy and floral notes, the wanderer moved onward from the softly glowing mosses and the murmuring embrace of the resonance pool. The path, still guided more by intuition than by any clear marking, led them gently upwards onto slightly higher ground, where the character of the Vale seemed to shift once more, becoming, if possible, even more serene, more deeply imbued with a sense of ancient peace. Here the trees were taller, their canopies forming a higher, more distant ceiling, allowing for a greater sense of quiet spaciousness below. It was in a wide, sheltered clearing, bathed in the soft, diffused light that was the Vale's signature, that the wanderer discovered the true source of the pervasive, comforting warmth they had felt since first stepping across the threshold. There was no fire, no smoldering embers, no visible sunbeams piercing the canopy. Instead, the warmth emanated from a remarkable collection of plants, the Therma-Flora, whose broad, almost heart-shaped leaves, some as wide as a welcoming platter, glowed with a soft internal heat. These were ancient-looking flora, their stems thick and sturdy, their leaves a deep, velvety green, and they stood in a loose, companionable circle, like a gathering of wise, silent elders sharing their gentle radiance. The wanderer approached them slowly with a sense of quiet reverence. The heat these plants produced was not fierce or drying, but a steady, encompassing warmth, like that of sun-baked stones long after the sun itself has set, or the gentle heat from a perfectly banked hearth on a cool evening. Reaching out a hand, the wanderer touched one of the large leaves. Its surface was incredibly soft, like the finest suede, and the warmth was tangible, a comforting solidity that seemed to invite a longer caress. It was a most remarkable thing, this living heat, a quiet miracle of the Vale's unique ecosystem. And the scent? Oh, the scent in this clearing was a wonder in itself. It was a complex yet harmonious perfume, a blend of aromas that spoke directly to the soul's deepest memories of comfort and gentle sustenance. There was a distinct note reminiscent of freshly baked bread, warm and yeasty, a fragrance that instinctively soothed and reassured. Woven through this were hints of sun-dried herbs, perhaps a touch of something like sweet hay, and a faint, lingering spice like distant cinnamon or mildest clove. It was a scent that made one want to breathe deeply, to fill the lungs with its goodness, a scent that whispered of home, of nourishment, of simple, profound contentment. Near the edge of this natural congregation of Therma-Flora, tucked away as if by thoughtful design, the wanderer found a naturally formed alcove. It was a shallow depression in the earth, almost like a gently cupped hand, and it was deeply cushioned with a thick layer of fallen leaves from the surrounding trees. These leaves were not damp or decaying, but dry, crisp, and surprisingly soft, having been warmed and preserved by the gentle heat of the clearing. It looked for all the world like the most inviting of natural couches, a place prepared for rest. With a sigh of pure, unadulterated peace, the wanderer settled into this leafy embrace. The cushioning was perfect, yielding yet supportive, and the gentle warmth from the nearby Therma-Flora enveloped them like the softest, most cherished of blankets. From this vantage point, they could observe the slow, almost imperceptible life of the clearing. Tiny, iridescent insects, no bigger than a dewdrop, flitted occasionally between the great leaves, their wings a blur of faint color. A single perfectly formed feather, perhaps from a bird that knew the vale's secret ways, lay undisturbed on the mossy ground nearby, a tiny sculpture of natural elegance. The warmth was not merely an external sensation. It seemed to penetrate deeply, reaching into muscles and bones, coaxing out any lingering stiffness, any residual tension that the wanderer had unknowingly carried. It was a profoundly relaxing heat, promoting a sense of weightiness, of sinking gently into the earth's embrace. The comforting aroma, too, played its part, calming the mind, smoothing away the edges of any thoughts that might try to intrude upon this perfect peace. It was a place that encouraged a complete surrender to tranquility. Here, in what felt like the very heart of the vale, its hearth of stillness, the wanderer felt a profound sense of safety, of being utterly sheltered and cared for. There were no demands, no expectations, only the gentle offering of warmth, comfort, and peace. It was as if the vale itself was extending a tender welcome, an invitation to rest as long as needed, to drink deeply from its wellspring of serenity. The quiet was profound, yet it was a living quiet, punctuated by the almost inaudible hum of the Therma-Flora's gentle energy and the occasional soft rustle of a leaf overhead. Time in this clearing seemed to slow almost to a standstill. Minutes, hours, they had no meaning here. There was only the present moment, unfolding with infinite gentleness, steeped in warmth and the scent of pure comfort. The wanderer's breathing became slow and even, each inhale bringing in the soothing aroma, each exhale releasing a little more of the world's forgotten weight. This, they thought with a quiet sense of wonder, this was a peace so profound it felt like coming home to a place they hadn't even known they were missing. Chapter 4. The Unfolding Petals and the Quiet Heart. Within the gentle embrace of the Therma-Flora's warmth, nestled in the soft alcove of fallen leaves, the wanderer drifted into a state of profound repose, a quietude that hovered delicately between waking and dreaming. The passage of time, if it could be measured at all in this timeless vale, was marked only by the subtle deepening of the surrounding peace, by the almost imperceptible exhalations of warmth from the great velvety leaves nearby. There was no urgency here, no call to action, only the silent, generous offering of stillness. From their vantage point, the wanderer's gaze often rested upon the central cluster of the Therma-Flora, and as they watched, with eyes softened by tranquility, they began to notice a slow, almost imperceptible movement. At the very heart of some of the largest plants, nestled deep within the protective cradle of their mature leaves, were what appeared to be giant, tightly closed buds. Over what seemed like many gentle hours, or perhaps it was merely the slowing of perception that made it so, these buds began a most majestic and unhurried unfurling. Each petal, a structure of immense size and delicate texture, seemed to move with a serene, deliberate grace, revealing an inner surface that glowed with an even softer, more tender light than the outer leaves. The colors within were subtle, like the faintest blush of a sunrise on a misty morning, or the gentle cream of a rare night-blooming bloom. This slow, silent ballet of unfolding was a mesmerizing spectacle, a testament to the patient, indomitable processes of nature occurring here, in this hidden sanctuary, far from any judging eye, simply for the sake of its own beautiful expression. As these magnificent petals opened, they released an even more delicate and refined version of the comforting fragrance that already permeated the clearing. It was less of the robust, bread-like aroma and more of a sweet, almost ethereal perfume, like warm honey infused with the faintest hint of spice and the clean scent of pure, sun-warmed blossoms. It was a fragrance that seemed to speak directly to the heart, evoking feelings of gentle joy and profound, quiet gratitude for such simple, unearned beauty. The wanderer observed this slow miracle with a sense of quiet awe. Thoughts, which earlier had been like a busy, chattering stream, had now quietened to a mere trickle, a slow, clear meander through a peaceful landscape. They no longer snagged on worries or plans, but flowed gently around the observations of the moment, the texture of a leaf, the subtle shift of light, the silent eloquence of an unfurling petal. There was a profound sense of simply being, of existing in a harmonious accord with the gentle, rhythmic pulse of life that throbbed almost palpably through the veil. The warmth, too, seemed to undergo a subtle transformation. It was no longer perceived solely as an external sensation, a gift from the Therma-Flora. Instead, it felt as though that gentle heat had seeped inwards, kindling a similar warmth within the wanderer's own core. It was as if the stillness of the vale had brewed itself into a comforting draught, and this had been slowly sipped, spreading its soothing influence throughout their entire being, settling into a quiet ember in the hearth of their own heart. This inner warmth mirrored the profound peace of their surroundings, a resonance between the self and the sanctuary. There was a deep acceptance in this state, an understanding without words that all was well, that here, in this moment, nothing was lacking. The simple act of breathing became a quiet pleasure, each inhalation drawing in the sweet, warm air, each exhalation releasing any lingering shadows of unease. The body felt wonderfully heavy, yet light at the same time, grounded and yet somehow afloat on a sea of tranquility. It was a paradox that only perfect peace could resolve. The sounds of the vale, always subtle, seemed to fade even further into a backdrop of profound silence, a silence that was not empty, but full of unseen, unheard life. Perhaps it was the rustle of a tiny creature making its way through the undergrowth, or the sigh of a distant warm spring, or the almost inaudible hum of the earth itself, breathing. These were sounds that did not disturb the quiet, but rather deepened it, becoming part of its rich, gentle tapestry. In this state of serene immersion, the wanderer felt a connection, not just to the Therma-Flora or the Luminous Moss, but to the entirety of the Vale, to its ancient stones, its soft earth, its gentle air. It was a feeling of belonging, of being an intrinsic part of this peaceful, harmonious whole. There was no separation, only a quiet melding, a shared existence within the embrace of this extraordinary hidden haven. The heart, once perhaps a little guarded, now felt open and soft, receptive to the gentle kindness that the Vale so generously offered. And in that openness, it found its own quiet, steady rhythm, beating in time with the slow, unfolding beauty all around. Chapter 5. The Lingering Radiance and the Softened Path. As the soft, diffused light within the Vale underwent an almost imperceptible shift, a subtle brightening that hinted at the quiet passage of a deeply restful and elongated period, the wanderer stirred, not with a start, but with a slow, gentle awareness, like a leaf unfurling in the first tender warmth of a new day. There was no abruptness to this awakening, only a gradual return to a more focused consciousness, yet the profound peace of the deeper repose lingered, a comforting presence that clung like the scent of sweet incense in a quiet temple. A feeling of immense quiet gratitude bloomed within their chest, as soft and natural as the unfurling petals they had witnessed, a thankfulness for the sanctuary found, for the deep restoration received. The pervasive warmth of the clearing emanating from the steadfast Therma-Flora remained a constant comforting embrace. It was a warmth that now felt intimately familiar, not just as a sensation on the skin, but as a gentle ember of peace that had been kindled and carefully tended within their very core. This inner radiance was a gift from the Vale, a resonance of its own tranquil heart, and the wanderer sensed, with a quiet certainty, that this was a warmth they would carry with them long after they had departed this hidden haven. It was a subtle armor against the chill of less gentle places, a soft light for quieter paths ahead. With no sense of urgency, no clock to heed save the body's own unhurried wisdom, the wanderer rose slowly from the alcove of warmed leaves. Each movement was fluid, easy, imbued with a newfound grace that spoke of released tensions and a spirit deeply at ease. They stretched languidly, feeling the pleasant suppleness in their limbs, the absence of any ache or weariness. It was as if they had slept for 100 years, not in a cursed slumber, but in a blessed healing rest, from which they emerged not older, but renewed, refreshed to their very essence. They took a moment to once more behold the magnificence of the Therma-Flora, some of whose great blossoms were now fully open, displaying their subtly glowing inner surfaces, their delicate, almost shy beauty. A gentle nod of acknowledgement, of thanks, was offered to these silent, generous beings, these living hearths of stillness. Then, with a soft sigh that was more contentment than farewell, the wanderer began to seek the path that would lead them out from the Vale's embrace. It appeared almost as if, by gentle invitation, a slight thinning in the density of the surrounding foliage, a subtle beckoning towards the world beyond. As they retraced their steps, moving with the same unhurried pace that the Vale itself had taught them, they noticed details with a new clarity, a heightened appreciation born of inner stillness. The luminous moss in the shadier groves still cast its pearlescent glow, and its gentle warmth seemed to reach out like a friendly hand. The resonance pools still hummed their deep, soothing song, their surfaces mirroring sky that was not seen but felt. Each element of the Vale seemed to offer a quiet blessing as the wanderer passed, a lingering touch of its unique peace. Even the ancient stones that marked the threshold of the Vale, the very same stones that had felt cool and impassive upon entry, now seemed to hold a faint, comforting warmth when brushed by a passing hand. It was as if they had absorbed some of the Vale's gentle essence, or perhaps it was the wanderer's own perception that had been softened, made more receptive to the subtle energies of the world. The passage out was as unassuming as the entry, a simple parting of ways with this extraordinary sanctuary. Stepping back into the world beyond the great stones, the wanderer found that the outer light, which might once have seemed harsh or indifferent, now appeared softer, the sounds of the wider world less clamorous. It was not that the world itself had changed so drastically, but rather that the wanderer's perception of it had been subtly recalibrated by the profound peace of the Vale. The edges of things seemed less sharp, the demands of existence less strident. There was a new spaciousness within, a quiet reservoir of calm from which to draw. The peace of the Vale was not left behind like a forgotten dream. Instead, it was carried onward, not as a fleeting memory that would soon fade, but as an integrated living part of their being. It was in the gentle rhythm of their breath, in the easy way they now carried themselves, in the quiet smile that touched their lips for no reason other than the simple joy of existence. The Vale of Gentle Warmth had offered its profound gift, and it had been received with an open heart. And so the wanderer continued their journey, their path now illuminated by a soft inner radiance, a lingering warmth that whispered of stillness found and peace deeply known.